For the record, I did not sleep with Mariah Miles. For the record.
I forgot all about that, Oh man, it's been quite the week.
But, however, if there are any other ones out there that would like to, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now, just know that you are locked in until the point with the king. You guys know what to do. Go down there, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. If you don't want to see these gorgeous faces right there, you could also see us Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching us. Go down there. If you enjoy it, click subscribe, click that bell so you can keep returning for the content, because we're doing this for you, ladies and gentlemen. And we also have a major family from the To The Point family, which, if you're watching, I consider you that. And right there, we got my man B. That's what I call him. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good, man. It's been interesting times, boy, in the NBA. Interesting times in a whole bunch of ways. But we keep this the Raptors talk today. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having a discussion today. There seems to be a little bit of news that's happening in Raptors land, so looking forward to talk to you about it.
Okay. Would you be able, before we get into it, would you be able to let the ladies and gentlemen, the lovely To The Point viewers out there, know where they can find you and where they can support you? And if you guys support us, I hope that you support him as well. Can you let them know?
Sure, man. You can find me on Twitter in this case at Beyond Locker Room. That's RM in this case here. I usually chatting about something NBA related or definitely sports related. And you have my musings about stuff and come along and join the discussion. So I look forward to you there, and you'll find me on all sorts of great channels like this one here on YouTube.
Yeah, you might find me on there at some point because I got some stuff that I want to say to you. But anyway, thank you again for joining me today. So B, I gotta. So there's a hole that where the void was filled, and I'm not talking about anything with Zion right now. Okay, but concerning the Toronto Raptors, currently there was that void of not having a coach after the dismissal of Nick Nurse, and now that the Raptors have, help me out here on this one, Darko
Rajakovic. That's it, Rajakovic.
Shout out to my Serbian people.
Exactly.
Help me out on this one, okay?
No disrespect at all, man. We're working through it. We're gonna get it right, but I think I got it right, Rajakovic. But by all means, I'll be listening to it afterwards and making sure I got the pronunciation just right. We're gonna have some time to get it figured out. Let's put it that way. We'll have some time.
So now that Nick Nurse is gone, and now the Raptors have filled that void in the head coaching position, Darko has, I'm just going to refer to him as that because I do not want to insult the man's name. He's been coaching since '96 in Serbia on the tier 4 teams, and shoot, he's a year older than me.
That's what I'm saying. He's only 44. So that's the part I think for folks to understand when you make that statement. He's 44. Okay, he used to coach since '96. Okay, he's 44.
I started in '93, but right. Now like he has been not really accomplished, right? According to accolades and what he's done. But he has made a name for himself with the Serbian team, with OKC, right? With the Phoenix Suns, with the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, he has had guys in his pocket that he has coached, such as Devin Booker, the Ja Morant. He's had some of these young guys. He's also had to deal with Chris Paul's. You know what I mean? Like, he has some of these guys that he has had to lead. And apparently, like, myself as you fellow Raptors fans, we're not too certain on who he is and his background because this kind of came out of nowhere, right?
It
Now,
did and it didn't. But yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
yeah, exactly, right? Because we saw a bunch of names, David Alman, we saw a bunch of like Sergio, we saw a bunch of people that could possibly lead the Raptors team in the locker room, but now it is Darko, right? And this is what I want to ask you. Now, here's a pressing question for you, and I hope you enjoy this one, and I'd love to hear your response. Now, what do you think? Here we go. The reasons they hired him with this hiring process that Bobby and Masai have had.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Okay, there's a lot of layers to this. Bear with me, viewers and fans at home. I look at this a couple ways. One is they wanted to address the fact, and it kind of ties together. They wanted to have someone that was kind of considered to be the anti-Nick Nurse in some ways, right? So you kind of hinted at and alluded to it. One of the things that we know in this case was an issue with Nick Nurse in the front office was the lack of player development of the young guys, right? It wasn't happening. There wasn't a lot of opportunity as far as the front office is concerned. If you want to be fair, and be fair to Nick Nurse, and I think there is some legitimate argument that some of the options they were providing were not really the greatest options either. So I think there's a bit of wrong on both sides and a bit of right on both sides. However, they are looking for someone that is, in this case, and one of the strengths of Darko's is that he's a very good coach when it comes to player development. That's what his strengths is supposed to be. In this case, OKC's always got young players, and they've always seemed to, kind of like, nurtured young players pretty well. The 1 year in Phoenix was the year in the bubble when they started taking off at the end of the year, and obviously in the bubble. And some of those young players there started coming to a next level. And then obviously his time in Memphis in this case and what he's done, hopefully to help, players like, Triple J, Bane, and others in this case, and of course, Mr. Morant, and Aldama and others. So he's from that standpoint, he's shown, it seems like he's shown some type of like, resume that he can do so. We'll see. But that is definitely forefront of their mind. The other element they wanted to, which I think they wanted to maintain from a Nick Nurse standpoint, is an X and O's guy. And he seems to have that background as well, too. He's very much a tactician, it seems like, as well, from his background, his resume. Now, the part that concerns me from the process you mentioned, I asked this question you prior. I've asked it to some of our friends and colleagues that we talked to in the Raptor space. Did we need 2 months to get to where we got to? And what I mean is, when the initial list came out and Nick Nurse was going to get fired, okay, I was out of town. I'll just put it that way when the last game happened for the Raptors. And it took about a week plus change for them to decide, oh yeah, we might want to get rid of Nick Nurse. All this time, Houston's already got opening and Detroit's got opening. And they're sitting around, kind of fooling around, figure out what they're going to do. However, I do wonder, when the short list initially came out, they had a lot of different, most of them were all assistants. Charles Lee, Adelman was in the mix. You heard in this case here, Jordy Fernandez, who obviously was near the last people in this recruiting or this hiring process. And this gentleman, Darko, was also on the list initially. When you go back and look at reports, he was also one of the kind of people we're looking at. Yeah, people forget that, but he was on the list too initially. Now, all sorts of things. We went around the mulberry bush and we had Steve Nash and JJ Redick and then a Becky Hammond sighting happened for like 3 days. And, of course, the Ime debacle in this case happened. We were always to finally get, you forget all about that. And then even up to last week, there was already reports of they're looking to talk to Kenny Atkinson, who was on supposedly the initial list of people they wanted to. Kenny Atkinson all of a sudden came out of the blue. And literally 2 days before they hired him, there was rumors out there that Charles Lee was finally getting spoken to. So you're sitting there going like, what are we doing here, people? For a gentleman, okay, if you want to say like, well, he's in the playoffs, so we had to wait. Memphis has been eliminated for like 6 weeks now. it's not like, come on, guys. Like the other guy, you can say, okay, Alman, if it was Alman or say Quinn from Miami, you can make the argument and say, okay, they're waiting until their seasons are done to be respectful to the teams in the finals, don't want to create a distraction. Understand that. But that's not the case. You end up here, and to me, it looks like in this case here, a franchise or a front office that was split on what they wanted to do. So they kind of split the difference. Some folks probably wanted to go with a much more innovative coach in this case. Others might have gone with a much more senior guy, had more of a name, and I think they landed on let's go in the middle. So someone that could kind of be best of both worlds. If you want to go in a retool and keep the kind of most of the core, he could adapt to that type of roster. Or if you want to go swing the fences and cut it all the way down to rebuild, he could be also that too.
See, now that leads me to, okay, my point about this is you just said it right there about the Raps taking their time. Why do they take their time? Now, honestly, what I believe is that they took their time because Bobby and Masai are very methodical. They're basically like surgeons when it comes to what they want, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their hiring of Darko could reflect on how it affects their vision of 6'9", of positionless basketball. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it right now. The Raptors were kind of in a little bit of confusion, a little bit of disruption, a little bit of like they weren't there. They weren't set. They did not build on the year before when they got the 4th seed. The players weren't there, and Nick Nurse at the helm of it wasn't really keeping them together, like pulling a Phil Jackson and having to go get Dennis Rodman out of a friggin' hotel room in Las Vegas. You know what I mean? He wasn't holding it down. Now, my question to you, B, is now that Darko is part of your Toronto Raptors organization, do you think he can like hone in on what the players are, since he's a younger guy, right? Because I'll tell you straight up, when I work with 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds, I talk to them and they think I'm in my 20s, but meanwhile I'm holding them down. You know what I mean? And I'm showing them the ropes. Do you think he can do that, and at the same time holding down Masai and Bobby's vision of 6'9", especially of the exceptional talent the Toronto Raptors have on their roster?
Okay, I guess we'd agree on how exceptional the talent is. I don't think it's that exceptional, so that's me. I think one of the problems that the Raptors had, and
Barnes.
Yeah. Well, no, Barnes is fine. I mean, but he too, in this case, has his warts that need to be worked out. Because I think you kind of hit it on the head a little bit. Is that, and this is one of my concerns with this pick a little bit. I don't think I'm going to say something controversial here. Go
ahead. Go ahead.
I don't think the Raptors front office values coaching. And I'm curious to see when the time comes and when the terms of this deal come out, how much this gentleman's getting paid, right? Because I think what we're seeing here more and more, and you just go to the history, I'm talking about within the Masai era. I think that they like to do things a little bit when it comes to coaching on the cheap. And I think one of the issues we're seeing here is that this is my theory, that they pretty much landed on him because like they figured some of the other candidates they may wanted too much. That is my theory of the case. And then they landed here. Who was more.
So do you think he's like a puppet for them to?
I think the Raptors would prefer to have a coach in this case that's a little more submissive. Let's put it that way. I think in this case that if they had picked a coach a lot earlier that had more say into who they're going to draft in about a week's time, that would be nice. You know, but here we are now. He's now hasn't even got a press conference yet, and essentially the press conference will be bumping up to the draft. I don't know. Maybe behind closed doors, they've talked about what the player is and stuff like that. But I would think a coach would like to have more input on exactly what type of player he wants to get if he's employing offense or defense. But the Raptors seem to have, to your point, want wherever their vision to be, and they're, by hell or high water, they are definitely going to go down that path. So we already heard those issues with Nurse, where Nurse was saying like, get me some dudes in here. And they were saying, we gave you dudes. And he's like, them ain't dudes. Okay. And now we're here now. I just look at the type of coaches they picked in this case. When Nurse came along, you got $3 million. No one's looking for Nick Nurse when they hired him. right? To be fair, Nick Nurse came out of nowhere, essentially. It wasn't like Nick Nurse was on everyone's hot list to go and pick for a coach. Dwayne Casey's extension obviously wasn't Masai's initial pick, but they extended him. But for the most part, to be fair to Dwayne Casey, he was a journeyman coach. Not really someone in this case to look at as a high caliber coach. And I'm not disparaging what he's done for the Raptors. He's probably one of the most important figures in Raptor history, to be honest with you. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just looking at what when it comes to value. So now this gentleman here, no disrespect to him in this case here, he's got a ton of assistant thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you had to pick a list of who were the top lead assistants, his name would probably be near of the quote hot list. His was near the bottom of the list most times. You would hear Charles Lee, you would hear Quinn, Adelman, all those assistants in this case here, Jordy, all those were like assistants people I think saw in a higher caliber in this case than this gentleman. It doesn't mean he might not be a good coach.
My personal favorite is Jama Mahalela. And I have a
right. I mean, Jama, right? Jama got a little. I forgot Jama was in there for a little minute of some buzz with him. But there's another one, Atkinson, same thing, right? These were the top guys that people were saying, "Oh, someone's going to get." There's a head coaching position for sure. So the thing is, it worked out well for in some ways because when big name teams went out earlier in the playoffs than expected, more likely big name teams want to get more big name coaches because they're looking to win titles. So it pushed all these assistants down a level, which gave more opportunity for the Raptors to have their pick of the litter in this case here. But I find it interesting that they ended up with him, who really wasn't on anyone else's list of all these coaching jobs. I never heard him get an interview with anybody else. And you're sitting there wondering, like, that's interesting.
Okay. Like I was alluding to earlier, with I honestly I think I'm just gonna sit back and wait to see what happens, right? How it plays out. But also on the same token, right? Do you think that because of his hiring, and we just talked about it, like him being puppeteered for Masai and Bobby to coach this team, utilizing the assets that they have, right? Oh man, this is gonna hit some people, and Mom, I'm so sorry. Okay, do you think there are going to be those free agents that Toronto have available, and maybe some of those with different contracts that can leave this team to help Darko? Because you just mentioned that they bring in a coach at a certain point and he has no say into what players he has. Do you think he actually might? And if so, what players do you think you can see leaving? Because I'll tell you guys this much: Freddie and GTJ probably ain't going to be here next year.
I agree with that assessment. I definitely think Fred is gone. I don't think it matters what coach is coming in here. I think Fred, it's no different like a spoiled child, right? It's like, right, when you get in your way all the time, all of a sudden now you have a new sheriff in town. You ain't trying to hear that in this case here. So I think Fred is gone. I do think GTJ is probably gone too, but I think there's a better chance for him to stay, depending on who the coach is. Will this coach make
a difference?
I don't know. That will be interesting, but I don't know really. I think it also depends on the draft pick you have, because likely they're going to draft a guard, and depending what type of guard they have.
And that's a sure sign that Freddie's gone. But go on.
Well, sure sign one to two they're gone, if not both of them, right? So, but I think even if both had to stay, I think they still need to draft a guard. Like I think they needed some more dynamism and some more on the ball, action for when it comes to from an offensive standpoint from the backcourt. They just didn't have enough of it, even if they stayed. But I think that's going to be obviously a big push this year to get improved guard play. So if these two are gone, you're going to have to get them in there via the draft, mid-level exception, via trade. I think some of the guys on the bench might have to get moved on because I think they're past their expiry date a little bit, and I think some of them have to move on as well too. But those are ways to improve the team where you have that. That's where the retooling mindset comes in. You could do that. So there's ways to go about signing trades, for example. I think you're likely to get a sign trade from Fred more so than you were for Gary. I think based on Gary's probably sourness of how things went down. I think is like, I don't know if Gary's willing to be doing a sign trade and kind of give me a favor. I think Fred potentially, because Fred wants more money by all costs. I think so. I think Fred's more than willing to do a sign trade if possible.
Houston, you'll have a problem.
Yeah, but the thing is with the playoff situation, it moved that lever more to Fred leaving because more teams need his services than before. I think now Phoenix is in play. You just mentioned Houston, the Lakers. I think even Chicago, even though they're not in the playoffs, I think they could use him because all the worry about Lonzo Ball's situation is getting dire.
Yeah,
that's 4 teams, and that's his hometown essentially. That's 4 teams right there off the top of my head. Right, and I'm sure there's a couple other. There's still always you always wonder a little bit about Orlando down the road. That was always
there's Brooklyn, Orlando. There's
yeah.
so many other teams that are out there.
Yeah, so
that can use him.
Or depending on what happens to Kyrie, Dallas. Right, there's possibilities of a lot of different places. Right, it depends where Kyrie falls. He's gonna get he's gonna get the opportunity for whoever doesn't get Kyrie. So. He's gonna have a lot of options out there now, and I think that's what you just hope for the Raptor fan is that he picks a team that's got a lot of assets. To use your term, that you get something back in a sign trade that's half decent. That's all you can hope for. So Houston is an intriguing possibility because they got a lot of interesting players.
Yeah, Harden could go there, and then Freddie can go to Philly, rejoin Nick Nurse.
Right,
that's
Philadelphia.
There.
Yeah, that's another possibility. Philadelphia, though, it's like I'm hoping not because Philadelphia doesn't have really a lot that I would want. So, I would prefer someone like Houston. I would prefer someone like even the Lakers. I would prefer, maybe something like Lonnie Walker coming back, for example. I would prefer anything like that. Houston, the Lakers, Chicago, maybe. Those are better options than me if he goes there for a sign trade. Orlando, of course.
So you think Freddie's gone? Just yes or no?
Yes, gone.
Okay. GTJ, yes or no?
More likely lean yes, gone.
Anybody else? Just give me a name.
Via free agency or just gone for some other reason?
Gone for a trade.
I think I would be concerned for Chris Boucher. I think Malachi Flynn's days are close to being numbered.
Boucher. There's one more thing before we get out of here, since we're short on time. There's one more thing that I wanted to ask you. Now that we're speaking about Darko joining the Raptors organization and holding down the head spot on the coach on the benching, right? Do you see that he can possibly play a role like for his time to shine in the Eastern Conference? Since we've alluded to Nick Nurse on Philadelphia, Adrian Griffin going to hold the reins in Milwaukee, Monty Williams in Detroit. And with a huge contract, but we've seen change in the landscape of the coaching in the Eastern Conference. Do you think Darko can make an impact with the Raptors based on what the other teams are going to do? Because Dwayne Casey ain't there in Detroit, so they ain't got the number for the Raptors anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That Casey curse, right?
Yeah.
So do you see him causing an impact within the Eastern Conference and maybe shifting gears? Because we see how Orlando, is trying to move up. We see Atlanta trying to move up. We've seen how Milwaukee held it down last year. We've seen all these teams. Boston.
I'll put it in 2 different ways. One is to directly answer the question. I think the Eastern Conference is wide open, so there's opportunity there right now. So that's the reason why I think a lot of talk about retooling, because right now, to your point, what you just described so well, a lot of teams are in flux. Number 2, I think directly about him. To me, if he shows the confidence and empowers his star player, and I think if he has that type of relationship with Siakam, I think that will go a long way with how this team goes next year. Because I don't think, let's put it this way. Siakam in his early years, I think Casey had a lot of faith in and put a lot of things to empower him to become the player he is now. But during the Nurse years, I don't think Nurse actually empowers Siakam. Even how well Siakam played, I don't think he actually, I think it's almost like one of those things where it's unfortunate because he kind of gets put in a bad position, because a lot of times what will happen is Nurse will not run plays for him late in games, for example. And then it end up in this case here, you'll hear a lot of stuff with like, well, he doesn't come up in the clutch and stuff like that. He's never put in the opportunities to actually thrive in those positions in this case because the coach doesn't put him in good positions to do so. But then when it gets to really key moments, such as like the playing game, he's in these positions where he's not used to being in these positions that often because he doesn't get the ball. You need those reps, right? You need the reps. You need the reps. And if nothing else, if Darko could do that, empower him, it might look ugly for a few weeks in November, but get those reps in there of giving the ball to him late game situations and getting that rep in here. And the same thing I would say in this case here, depending on how Scotty's growth is, same would go with him in this case here as well. But obviously to a lesser amount, but the same thing there. But to me, that's the biggest thing that will help. And then, and then defensively, I think just providing a consistent defensive mentality where it doesn't seem so chaotic. And I think that will help a lot.
Hallelujah and amen to what you said, brother, about development. I've been harping on this for the last 2 years. And I totally agree with you. Like, empower your people. I know from when I've managed stores, restaurants, retail outlets, you empower your people and you will see a definite gain in what you want, right? I get that. I totally get that mentality. That's amazing that you said that because a lot of people have not said that. But you just said one last thing before we get out of here. You just said it. When it comes down to development, what do you think about Rico Hines maybe being an assistant coach on that bench?
Well, Rico, I think Rico is a representation or kind of like an avatar to what type of, there's, they always say there's always like, I guess what they call it in this case when you talk about diplomacy, and there's like there's soft power and hard power, right?
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times Van Vliet would do hard power, right? He's coming out in press conferences, he's kind of throwing his weight around and stuff like that. He's kind of chastising other players, younger players, whatever the case may be.
Subliminally, too.
Subliminally and sometimes even directly. Hard power. Siakam plays more of a diplomatic game where he's more soft power. And what I mean by that is, if you look around and see the moves the Raptors have made, his brothers in the organization, Rico Hines is his man, Earl Watson was his dude.
Yep.
They made the trade for his best buddy, essentially, Pirtle, right? It's not, he doesn't come out there making a whole bunch of hyperbole and making some crazy comments about this, that, and the next thing. He does a ton of press conferences. But these quiet little things that are happening here, he does have a lot of pull. And that's the rationale why Rico Hines is still on the bench probably next year. Because he's Siakam's guy. That's the only reason why. Now, one last thing about Darko before we head out. Keep an eye on the development of Koloko. I'm not saying he's Triple J, right? But there's very much a lot of like the same type of style and game from a defensive standpoint. It could get very interesting with him. He might be the key man in this case next season, even more so than Scotty. Watch that there. I'll leave it there at that, man.
Yeah.
Give you guys something to take, give something to look forward to next time, man.
Yeah, let's keep our eyes on the future. Right? Because those guys are pretty much the key. Right now, we're looking at guys that could possibly be leaving that we spoke about. There's guys that are in the middle of their career. Maybe some of them have already hit their prime. Maybe some of them are past their prime. But we can watch towards the future. You just said Koloko. Jeez. Bro, that's amazing. Before we get out of here, do you want to send a shout out to anybody out there?
No, man, just all the Raptor fans, man. Like, keep the faith. We're gonna be all right.
Thanks a lot for coming back on the show. Beyond the Locker Room, it's no zeros, no O's in room because he don't take no losses. Okay, guys? Thank you guys again for being here. Thank you, B, for joining me today and discussing this because this is a hot one. And we'll talk soon. So on behalf of myself and beyond, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and peace.